You can dress it up in lights. You can call it worship. You can pack the seats, pump the volume, and fill the air with smoke, machines, and emotion. But if it looks like a bar, feels like a bar, and leaves people empty like a bar, then maybe it's not what you say it is. We've confused performance with purpose. We've mistaken hype for healing. We've traded substance for style. We gather in buildings we call sacred, but the culture inside often mirrors the very world we claim to be set apart from. People walk in looking for transformation and walk out entertained. They come hungry for truth and leave with nothing but inspiration. That's not church. That's a production. That's a brand worth. That's a concert with a spiritual label slapped on it. And while the stage grows brighter, the people grow dimmer because we're shining lights in all the wrong places. A church is supposed to be a place of conviction, not just comfort. It should be the most courageous space in culture, a place where truth is spoken boldly, where lives are challenged, where people walk out changed, not just hyped up. But in many places, what we see instead is spiritual consumerism, a crowd that applauds performance but resists purpose, a culture where convenience has replaced commitment, where likes matter more than lives, where brand growth has become more important than spiritual growth. We say we want transformation, but we avoid the tension that creates it. We talk about truth, but we filter it through fear of offense. We say we're building community, but we treat people like customers. You don't build purpose through performance. You build it through pain, through honesty, through selfless leadership and radical responsibility. That's what we're missing. We've built stages, but lost our sense of mission. We've learned how to generate applause, but forgotten how to cultivate alignment. Somewhere along the line, we started trading depth for attention. Performance became the standard. Flashy became the goal. And slowly, the pursuit of impact was replaced with the pursuit of image. But when everything is about performance, the message takes a back seat to the moment and the truth. It gets buried beneath lights, timing cues, and curated energy. Performance is easy to measure. It's instant. You can count hands raised, record attendance spikes, watch views climb. But purpose, that's slow, that's internal. It doesn't always look impressive, but it builds something that doesn't crumble under pressure. Performance may fill a room. Purpose fills a life. And when people walk into a space looking for direction, but leave with nothing but emotion, they weren't led, they were entertained. This isn't about removing excellence. It's about redefining success. Because true impact isn't found in how loud people shout during the experience, but in how they walk, think, live, and lead after it. If the message doesn't anchor the performance, then the performance becomes hollow. It becomes noise in a world already drowning in noise. When the focus shifts from building people to building platforms, the culture begins to erode. People start measuring their value by how well they perform, not how deeply they're growing. The message gets shaped by what keeps people interested, not what keeps them strong. But purpose doesn't bend to popularity. Purpose stands firm. It builds legacy, not just momentum. And that kind of leadership doesn't draw people in for a moment. It calls them up for a lifetime. Because at the end of the day, people don't need another show. They need direction, truth, and a reason to rise. We live in a culture obsessed with comfort. Everything is designed to be faster, easier, more convenient. And that mindset has crept into places where it doesn't belong. It's one thing to want comfort in your schedule, but when you begin to demand it in your development, you sabotage your own growth. Growth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. It stretches, it challenges, it disrupts routines and exposes weaknesses. And yet, it's the only pathway to real transformation. When the environment is too safe, people stop moving. When the message is too soft, people stop listening. You don't grow muscles by sitting still. If you grow them by pushing through resistance. The same is true for character, discipline, and purpose. If the message only soothes, it can't strengthen. If it only encourages without challenging, it leaves people inspired but unchanged. The very thing people often run from. The discomfort of being confronted, corrected, or stretched is the very thing they need most. Comfort tells you to stay where you are. Growth tells you to step out. And in that tension, you find out what you're really made of. It's easy to stay in places that never challenge your mindset, your habits, your attitude. But nothing great ever comes from ease. The most powerful turning points in life are forged in discomfort. Moments when you were challenged, stretched, or shaken into something better. Leaders who prioritize comfort over growth are not leading people. They're babysitting them our worth. They may keep everyone happy for a while, but they rob them of the breakthroughs that only come through struggle. People don't remember the easy days. They remember the days that pushed them to grow. Comfort might feel good in the moment, but it will never build strength, courage, or lasting change. Truth is not supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be strong. It's not meant to be packaged in fluff, watered down for feelings, or adjusted to keep people entertained. Truth, in its rawest form, is disruptive. It confronts what we've tolerated. It exposes what we've ignored. And yet, it's the very thing that produces clarity, direction, and transformation. But in today's world, we've developed a habit of softening the blow, turning truth into suggestion rather than standard, as if its job is to keep everyone comfortable instead of calling them higher. When you strip the power out of truth, you remove the very thing that leads to breakthrough. You don't sharpen iron with cotton. You sharpen it with pressure, with heat, with resistance. And truth has the same effect. It may cut at first, but it also cleans. It may offend, but it awakens. It may sting, but it strengthens. Without truth, all you have is noise. Empty words that might sound good in the moment, but leave no lasting mark. And the problem isn't that truth has lost its power. It's that too many are afraid to speak it, afraid of pushback, afraid of being unpopular, afraid of losing the crowd. But leadership isn't about keeping the crowd comfortable. It's about leading them somewhere they've never been. And that means being bold enough to say what others won't, even when it costs something. Truth, when spoken with clarity and courage, builds trust. People may not like it at first, but deep down, they respect it. They know the difference between someone who panders to their preferences and someone who fights for their potential. When truth becomes non-negotiable, people stop playing games with their growth. They stop looking for permission to stay stuck and start seeing what's possible when they face what's real. There's a major difference between gathering a crowd and building a community. A crowd is easy. You can attract one with entertainment, trends, or emotional moments. You can fill a room with people who are curious, bored, or looking for a quick boost. But a community, that takes intention, that takes connection, that takes commitment. A crowd shows up, a community shows up and takes responsibility. And in a world where surface level engagement is everywhere, The need for real, connected communities has never been greater. You can't build something lasting on hype. You can't transform lives with shallow connection. Real growth happens when people go from spectators to participants, from consumers to contributors. That transition doesn't happen in a crowd. It happens in community. It happens when people don't just listen to truth, but start living it together. It happens when they move from sitting next to each other in rows to walking beside each other in life. That's where strength is forged. That's where depth begins. Too many are chasing numbers and missing impact. They count heads in a room, but never ask, are these people known, challenged, and growing? A real community doesn't care how many followers you have. It cares whether you're becoming who you were made to be. It holds you accountable. It pushes you forward. It reminds you that you're not alone, but also that you're not off the hook. It doesn't just comfort. It calls people higher. Crowds can come and go. Communities stay and build. They don't just react, they respond. They don't just agree, they act. And when the hard days come, and they always do, it's not the crowd that shows up. It's the community, because real relationships carry weight. They stretch you, support you, sharpen you, and remind you what this is really all about. Freedom has never been a passive experience. It's earned, protected, and sustained through intentional effort and relentless discipline. Too often, people talk about freedom like it's automatic, like it's something you simply receive and enjoy. But real freedom isn't the absence of struggle. It's the result of facing struggle head on and refusing to back down. You don't drift into freedom. You fight for it. You make hard choices. You stand firm when it's inconvenient. You shut doors to what once controlled you, even when no one's watching. There's no freedom without sacrifice. You can't live empowered while still chained to what once enslaved you. You can't walk in purpose while still making excuses for compromise. And yet, that's the trap so many fall into. They want the results of freedom without the cost of change. They want to be victorious without going through the war. But comfort never produces transformation. You don't break chains by hoping they'll fall off. You break them by confronting what frigid them. You can't be half committed and expect full breakthrough. You can't entertain old habits and expect new outcomes. The fight for freedom is daily. It's gritty. It demands that you say no to what weakens you and yes to what sharpens you, even when it's painful, especially when it's painful, because every time you resist the easy path, you build strength. Every time you face what you once avoided, you reclaim territory in your life that fear and failure used to own. Freedom isn't an emotion. It's not a mood. It's a mindset and a mission. And until you decide that you're done living under the weight of what you used to be, you'll keep circling the same patterns. The power to break free has never been about what happens to you. It's always been about what you're willing to confront and conquer. Leadership without conviction is nothing more than performance in disguise. It may look impressive from a distance, full of charisma, clever words, polished delivery. But the moment pressure shows up, it crumbles. Conviction is what separates real leaders from those simply chasing influence. It's not about being liked. It's about standing firm in what matters, even when it costs. Conviction doesn't bend when the crowd pushes back. It doesn't shift when the culture changes direction. It remains rooted not because it's easy, but because it's right. Too many are leading for applause instead of impact, worth. They shape their message based on what gets the least resistance instead of what produces the most growth. But leadership was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be clear. It was meant to guide, to guard, and to challenge people to live with greater purpose. That doesn't happen through vague suggestions. It happens through bold direction. And bold direction comes from conviction that runs deeper than popularity. Conviction creates consistency. When a leader speaks with conviction, people know where they stand. They trust them not because they're perfect, but because they're steady. They don't waver with every opinion or trend. They don't hide behind soft words to keep the peace. They speak with weight because their words are anchored in something real. And that weight shapes others. It awakens something in people that has been buried under compromise and convenience. Conviction doesn't need to yell to be heard. It needs to be lived to be respected. It's seen in the quiet decisions, the unpopular stances, and the unwavering standard. The leader with conviction isn't moved by approval or applause. They're moved by mission. They lead with fire in their bones and a spine that doesn't fold, because They know real leadership isn't about being accepted. It's about being anchored